Hey, everybody. With my co-host, Shawn Francis, I'm Brian Altunian. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. The economy is on everybody's mind as we get ready for Thanksgiving holiday this year. Travel, the cost of making a turkey at home. How do we handle this, this post-pandemic, pre-recessionary period? And are you taking care of your family? Today, we're going to be talking about some wealth maximization strategies. Some people are just in survival maximization, but we're going to be talking about wealth maximization strategies today on our today's episode of Just Two Dads. You think I'd have this all together, Shawn, since I've been doing this regularly for 2 years? Here we go. Another episode of Just Two Dads. Still seems to be a little bit of a delay. Anyways, hey, everybody. I'm Brian Altunian, along with my friend, my business partner, my colleague, my family, Mr. Shawn Francis. We are Just Two Dads. We started this podcast a little over 2 years ago, and it came out of conversations we used to have with folks who service and serve the special needs community as dads of children who have certain learning disabilities or special needs issues. Some people say medically complex. There's a whole bunch of variations of how we term it. Shawn's son, Elijah, on the autism spectrum, and my daughter, Jordan, who was diagnosed with microcephaly and other issues that created learning delays and learning disabilities. We're just two dads, and we were having a conversation several years ago about the work that we do in the financial services industry. And we thought, hey, listen, this is a community that we're a part of. Why don't we start helping folks think about their personal finances for those families that are in the special needs community? And so we began doing presentations for the special needs communities, and then decided we're having such a great time talking to folks and really learning how broad this network is. There's so many people out there servicing the special needs community, and yet a lot of folks don't even know each other. They don't know. And so we thought, let's create a platform to highlight, showcase those folks doing great things. We usually have guests on our podcast. Today we don't. We're going to chalk it up to the day before Thanksgiving. But today, if you're catching us live on Facebook, please leave us comments. Give us a thumbs up. Thank you, Amity. Give us a thumbs up already this morning. Put your comments on. We'll try to get them up on the screen. If you're hearing us on podcast outlets, wherever, we're on almost every podcast outlet, welcome. Send us a message. Our email address is wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. That's all one word, no dashes, no periods. And if you're catching us on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, hello, please leave us a message. Let us know how our messages are resonating, and if there are certain topics that you'd like to hear about, have us have a discussion or recommend a guest. We've got some great guests coming up in the next few, over the next few weeks. And so we're excited about this. We're excited to finish out this year with some amazing discussions. Today, we're going to be talking about wealth maximization strategies and how to make sure that our folks in our special needs community have access to cash and capital, and make sure that they're finding ways to maximize the cash flow coming in now, and then protect their families for the future, for that time when they pass on and somebody needs to take care of their children with special needs. So we'll get into that today. I'm pretty excited about that. And Shawn, this is a conversation we've been having for quite some time. But how are you feeling today about all this?
I'm feeling good. I find, I'm generally speaking, I'm feeling full of gratitude. You always, you often hear me say that, our biggest nightmares are somebody else's dreams. And, today's the day before Thanksgiving, and we do not have a full kitchen. We had a leak in a pipe in one of the bathrooms on the top floor of our house, and it came downstairs and got into the kitchen, so the kitchen had to get demoed. We still have our fridge and our oven, but there's no sink, so you can't wash anything. So we don't have a full kitchen, and we, quite frankly, we haven't for quite some time. But we finally got our, we're on our way with our contractor and all that kind of stuff. A whole lot of logistics we had to get out of the way before we could begin the repair and everything. And so it's now become sort of fun problem in picking out, colors and all that kind of stuff. But, it being Thanksgiving and you don't have kitchen, we're not making food as we, ordinarily do. And when I say we, I may as well be speaking French because my wife will say, we, you mean me. So, but I'm going to do the mac and cheese. I'm gonna go over to my brother's and use his kitchen to take care of that. I'll stop by my mom and stepdad and see them and everything. And we're still going to have a meal. Though. We've chosen a local restaurant that actually will prepare a meal, and I'm gonna go out later today and pick it up. And so, how does that compare to someone that literally has no idea where the next meal is coming from? And I've served meals to the homeless on Thanksgiving. As gone downtown LA to downtown LA and taking some of the kids with me on Skid Row and giving things out. I remember the first year I did that and I came home and everybody sat down at the tree. I sat there and everyone's opening presents at the tree. I sat there and cried because it was just like opening presents didn't mean the same thing. I had just come from downtown and saw that. So anyway, that's my long-winded way of saying, as usual, that your biggest nightmares really are somebody else's dreams. The man with no shoes complained continuously until he met the man with no feet. So
sure,
it all carries reference.
Listen, I have had Thanksgiving where the kitchen was in great shape and had a great meal, and then the one bathroom in my place backed up right at the beginning of the meal. So finding a plumber on Thanksgiving, not fun. So
it's the busiest day of the year for them. And then and I'm not going to say names because I don't have permission to do so, but I have a friend who's a member of the special needs community and played a great role in me having what I thought was the courage to be able to speak to fellow special needs families about their finances and improving that situation. This is someone who is a mom to a child with autism and had a family member that had a very severe medical emergency that took place to the point where they're going to have to let this person go.
Wow.
And this is something that occurred in the last couple of days. So if you've got a family member that you love and they're going to be under your roof tomorrow, or you're going to be under theirs, don't take for granted that because you're in their presence and they know that you love them, and they probably do, make sure you tell them, especially if it's something that you don't usually do, tell them anyway. If you generally show them and they know it, tell them anyway. And if there's a family member with whom you're at odds or anything like that, if both of you are still in life's picture, tell them anyway. Give people their flowers while they're here to smell them, because they won't always be. So with that said, I got started in our industry about 16 years ago. And I had this epiphany once I saw the manner in which, an opportunity to bring to families and business owners financial service and education without charging them for the actual consultation, for the knowledge that you gain, and then having access to almost the entire industry, and not being captive. In other words, you don't work at a bank and you have one product or products from one entity, and then to take a holistic approach, looking at the right type, the right amount of life insurance, short-term, long-term savings, estate planning, debt elimination, and the various forms of debt elimination, credit cards, student loans, as well as tax debt, all that. I thought if that stuff is great for families with neurotypical children, it's twice as important for those of us that have members with special needs. And I had to get out of my own way to get comfortable doing that, because my thought was, if somebody questions my integrity or my intention just once, I don't know if I could survive that. And just as I was getting out of my own way and getting up the courage to start something like this, because Elijah's diagnosis was fairly new at the time, that is when you walked into my life, into our business, and you happened to ask me, hey, have you ever thought about putting something together to serve our community? I said, I'm working on that right now. And that's when our initiative began. And what we've stuck to pretty much is the information and topics that I just talked about. Right type of life insurance, the right amount, short-term, long-term savings, all those different things. But in our conversation, as we continue to grow and evolve as individuals and our business as well, we've had specific conversations around, well, what are some of the things that would really, really specifically benefit our community? And that's where this conversation about wealth maximization has come from. And to the presentations and things that we give in the education and the events, those things are beginning to take shift and form. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And where we're going to start with is sort of mindset. If those of you that are familiar with the book, The Five Love Languages, it speaks to the notion of how one communicates and receives love. So in other words, if you grew up in a home where parents were affectionate with each other and with you and your siblings, your love language is one of affection. If you grew up in a home where your parents were providers, and that's the way that they show their love, then your love language is what's known as acts of service. And sometimes you can have people from one of each of those backgrounds meet and they fall in love, they're attracted to each other. They find out that over a period of time, they're saying on a daily basis, I love you. One essentially in French, the other in English, and they miscommunicate. They're not really meeting each other. Well, the same applies to our money personality, so to speak. There was an article that I saw in Investopedia, because I got to thinking that the way that we're raised and the experiences that we have around money or lack thereof affect the way that we think about it and our relationships with it. And so I ended up just looking that stuff up. And you've got several personality types. And those are what you call big spenders, right? And that kind of speaks for itself. A big spender is someone that is essentially keeping up with the Joneses, looking at high ticket items, big things. Those are people that are going to be quite busy on Friday when Black Friday comes, right? Then you've got people that are the opposite of spenders, and those are savers. Those are people that look to that are frugal, and some may even call them cheap. It depends. And then you've got shoppers, and those are people that usually make emotional purchases. If just like people turn to a challenge by eating, in some cases, people will do that by shopping. I know the gratification I get by shopping and buying something that I like, especially something that I don't always necessarily need. I also know, based on our experience in the business, what it's like to get a great deal on something too. And then there's people that are debtors. Those are not necessarily quite the same as big spenders. Big spenders will buy unnecessarily, but won't always necessarily go into debt because of their purchases. But debtors are people that will usually be deeply in debt as a result of living beyond their means. And then you have investors, and those are people that pretty much know how to put their money to work for them. So we have one thing: the family in which we were raised and the environment determines where in that category we fall. And that plays a great role in how we then deal with the diagnosis that a child or loved one may have. Just as the way that we were raised emotionally affects how we respond to that, the way that we were raised and our relationship with money gets affected as well. So the first thing to think about is, in terms of mindset, regardless of which one of those you fall under, is to think about from a plentiful standpoint, a mindset of abundance versus scarcity. Now, and I say this too, knowing that each situation is different, depending on the diagnosis and the level of care that you have to give and how time consuming it is. It may be more difficult for you than it is for others to have an abundance mindset, but that's the one that actually will serve you. So with that said, let's jump right into the wealth maximization mindset.
Well, let's you start. No, hold on. You started this, so let's talk about this. My brother had a friend who was CEO of a major corporation that got acquired by Microsoft many years ago, and had a home in Park City, Utah, 8,000 square foot cabin in Park City, Utah, massive. The guy made a lot of money in the acquisition. As CEO, paid off. He's paid out quite considerably. We would, my brother had a place in Park City as well, and so we would go and visit with this CEO, and he would say, "Hey, we should go to such and such place for dinner. Hold on a minute, I think I've got a coupon." The guy was worth millions of dollars, and he said, "I think I got a coupon. In fact, let's get 2 of these the handouts, these newsletters that they used to send out, green sheets, whatever they call them, little community newspaper. He goes, because then we'll each get one of these coupons, and then we'll get a meal for free. And I remember thinking at the time, like, you're worth millions of dollars. Like, is that really? But that was his mindset was not.
That's how he got there.
His mindset was, if they're giving it away, take it. Right? If they're giving it, they're not giving it so that you think, oh, you're really great. It's a really great company. They're giving it away so you take advantage of it. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why companies give out coupons and that type of thing. But I remember he was just thinking, like, it was a different mindset. My dad, when I grew up, my dad had his own business, had his own company. My mom was in real estate, and my dad made a lot of money. Was really smart in how he accessed capital through his business, and then what he did with it, and how he parlayed that into acquisitions of real estate, apartment buildings. And so he would take cash from one source, acquire an asset that then generated cash flow. So my dad was really smart in that type of thing. But the funny thing about it is that, yes, but we're still talking about mindset. So hold on, don't jump ahead.
Yeah.
But his mindset was that you can do all those things, but you don't act like somebody with money. And I remember thinking, like, again, I was a young, early teenager, and back in the days when we all had, one phone line coming into the house, and you had the long extension cord. You guys remember those days and then you would, like, grab the phone, and your privacy was like, you hopefully would walk around the corner from where the phone was on the wall. And I remember saying to him, hey, can we get an extension upstairs by the bedroom so that we can talk to our friends? And he was like, nope, not going to get you a phone line. We're not going to get you an extension. And I was like, oh, I was like, because we're not rich. We're not going to act like rich people. I remember thinking, like, you drive a Rolls Royce. Like, he's like, it was used. So he goes, don't think one means the other. So my dad had a really kind of interesting, relationship with money, and it changed our perspective. So I think you're right. Sometimes we do exactly what our parents do, or sometimes we do exactly the opposite of what our parents did. My dad was squirrel it away. But then again, listen, my dad invested in bonds. My dad didn't really invest in the stock market unless he knew somebody that was in a company and he wanted to support the company and buy stock in the company. But my dad bought bonds. For those that don't know, bonds are fairly conservative, not a lot of volatility in buying bonds out on the market. They kind of they perform counter to the stock market. Stock market goes up in general, bond market comes down, because stock is equity and ownership, and bonds is debt. And so if a company is doing really well and they're selling a lot of equity, they don't need a lot of debt. So the stock goes up, bonds go down. In those times when money's tight and the stock market drops, the bond market tends to go up. That's historically how it's happened. And we've had some awesome, weird, I say awesome in the sense of, like, weird occurrences happened in 2008. They thought they would never see the housing market and the stock market fall at the same time, and they both dropped at the same time. We're seeing indications that both the stock market and the bond market have come down in the last year. And so, in general, some of these practices work, but occasionally you have an odd situation in the market.
It's interesting, as you're talking about your dad and growing up and everything, I just thought of something. Regardless of the outcome, good, bad, or indifferent, wealthy people, and not rich, I mean wealthy, because there's a difference between those two.
Yeah.
Rich people have a lot of money. Wealthy people have a lot of money that works for them, right? And wealthy people are the only people that give conscious thought, usually and traditionally, to how they shape and affect their children's relationship with money. And people otherwise, from every other category, whether it's upper middle class, whatever the case might be, I don't think it's even given as a thought. And the truth of the matter is, you don't have to be wealthy to have a conscious thought about how you shape your children's relationship with money. And the relationship that you've had with it doesn't have to be passed on unless it's something that serves.
Yeah. Well, I in addition to my undergrad degree, I went and got my MBA, right? So as a finance person in corporate America, I looked at a lot of financial statements as a CEO of my own company and COO of other companies. Balance sheets and financial statements were how you really look at the health of a company. And if you think about it, and now we're kind of moving into sort of the wealth maximization strategy. If you think about it, if you run your personal life,
your home,
like a business, just think about it from this perspective, from a financial statement perspective. So there are three key financial statements in a business. One is a balance sheet. So your balance sheet is your assets versus your liabilities, right? So you want your assets to be more than your liabilities. So if the value of your house is higher than the mortgage, that's where your equity is, because the difference. So your house is worth $500,000 and your mortgage is $250,000. The difference is, they called it shareholder equity, right? So you've got an asset minus a liability. The difference is your equity. So that's really where your net worth is. So you're looking at acquiring assets that outpace your liabilities. So that's the balance sheet. And the second one is your P&L statement, your profit and loss statement, P&L, which really determines like money coming in versus money going out, right? Do you have more money coming in than going out? We used to have the saying, is there more money at the end of your month, or is there more month at the end of your money?
At the end of your money,
right?
Yep.
So you want to be looking at profit and loss from that perspective. And the third one, which for a lot of companies becomes a very critical financial statement, which is the cash flow statement. So it's okay if you've got some months where you're in sort of a negative cash flow, as long as you've got some asset on your balance sheet that you can access the capital to offset a cash flow that's negative. So those are the three documents that most businesses, that if you want to actually look at the health of a company, those are the three financial statements that you want to look at most: balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement. In some cases, if you have a public company, you look at stockholder equity, because you kind of see where shareholders, stockholders are participating, where the founders are. Do you have key executives that are really fully vested in the company, or are they just doing this for a job and a stock, and a stock play? Early investors want to know, is a founder fully invested in the company? They have a lot of skin in the game, or are they just looking to hit and run? But the three main ones that apply to families and home businesses, if you will, are those three main ones: assets. So when it comes to our financial lives, one of the things that we want to look at is, are we buying assets that add value on the balance sheet, but also can generate cash flow, right? Because that's really the thing. If you're buying a car, some people will spend, so the spenders on your list will go buy a car for what they think it provides them, the look of being wealthy or whatever. But if you think about it from a utility perspective, is the car, which is an asset that depreciates in value the minute you drive it off the lot, as they say, right? If that car is necessary for you to get to your business, that's going to help you on your cash flow, then obviously it doesn't really matter if it's a Yugo. Do they still make Yugos? It doesn't matter if it's I don't even know. You guys remember Yugos?
Yeah.
Yugo, that's the opposite of Nova, right? Nova in Spanish means Nova, doesn't go, which was
Right.
Chevrolet's biggest mistake, right? They sell the Chevy Nova, which means Nova, doesn't go. Wonder why they had trouble selling that car. But if buying a Yugo versus buying a Cadillac, right? The utility of it is kind of critical, but that's an asset that depreciates. So you're not going to get there's no real asset value to buying a vehicle. But if you take your money and you buy a piece of real estate, a property that can generate revenues like Airbnb or rental properties or income properties, that's a good use of capital, because you're building asset value and cash flow, positive cash flow. So those are why those three financial statements are key and critical. Anybody should look at their lives that way. So a lot of times when people are like, oh, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, first thing that we do is we say, well, let's look at your cash flow. Where is your money coming? So you've got two parents in the house and both of you have jobs. Okay, great. And minus your taxes and your net and everything else, what's your what's your cash flow, your P&L look like, because that's money coming in, and then where are you spending your money? So you can always reduce the amount of money on the expense side by reducing your expenses. And that's one thing to always look at, And when I say reduce expenses, I never want to tell people they should cut into their livelihood, so dramatically and drastically that they're not feeling, rewarded or alive, or, But I sat with a client one time, and she said, I have 3 cable boxes in my apartment. By the way, she had an apartment at the beach. She had a home in the valley. She lived kind of back and forth. She had three cable boxes in her apartment. It was costing her like $500 a month. She's like, I'm only there, once or twice a week, and I'm only in one room. I don't generally watch TV only in one room. Why am I spending so much money? But that's a good thing to do. Evaluate that P&L. Where are you spending your money? Are you spending your money in things that enhance your life, or that actually, are unnecessary expenses? So P&L is money coming in, expenses going out, and is there a difference? And can you improve it without changing your life drastically? Can you reduce your expenses? And is there a way to maximize the income you've got coming in? And so that's the kind of like the first thing that people should look at. And when I say maximize, in some cases, a lot of folks that I know, so I'm going to say, this is not financial advice. Talk to your tax advisor. A lot of people I know will reduce the number of dependents that they have taken out of their withholdings in their paychecks. And I always ask them, why do you do that? And they said, because we want to make sure we get a tax refund at the end of the year. And so I said, well, that's cool, if you think about it. So basically, you're letting the government have access to your cash for a year, 15 months, really, if you wait till April 15th to file your taxes. 15 months. And the thing is that the government uses that money. They don't give you interest on that money. So why do you want to be in a position to lend them money when you're living paycheck to paycheck? And I'm not telling them, everybody, look, maximize your withholdings to 10 per paycheck. That doesn't work either, because that could
within reason. Yeah.
But within reason, look at where you're putting that money now. The money coming out of your paycheck, because you could use a little bit more money out of your paycheck. And if you have, parents and, 2 or 3 kids, you at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, you want to be as close to, you don't owe them, they don't owe you, as much as you possibly can. And that's tax planning, proper tax planning. Yeah, you were saying something.
I want to touch on something you were talking about. We had a call yesterday. We were talking with a gentleman in the mortgage industry, and he was talking about leaving things behind. We were talking about a particular type of mortgage, which is a good conversation for a good topic for another conversation.
And we may be able to get into it here too.
Yeah, we can get into the basics of it here. But he was talking about the idea of, people saying, don't you want to leave something for your children, like leave a house that's paid off? And when he talked about the things that he wanted to leave her, he was saying, well, when I leave her, I don't want to live on tuna fish between now and when I pass away in order to leave her something. I don't want to drastically change the quality of my life. And so that's something that's a personal decision for each person too. So when you have a goal and you're like, here's what we're going to do without, so that we have this at the end. And this is something that's very, very personal. So each person has to determine what they're going to do. Some people, and it's easy to do this if you're younger, look, what we're going to do is just live on tuna fish sandwiches for the next year, 2 years, or whatever the case might be. So that at the end of that, we'll have X number of dollars. Because like you said, you're either going to cut back on what's going out, or if you find a way to increase what's coming in, whether it's pick up, get another part-time job, another stream of income, whatever the case might be. But make sure that you're able to make a very conscious and well thought out plan as to what you're going to do without. Because the other thing is, when you're dealing with a disability and care, where you're a caregiver for a child or loved one, there are certain things that you can probably have to do without and sacrifice in order to be there. But then by the same token, there's certain things that give you like peace of mind, that are the equivalent of your escape room, if you will, right? Little things, whether it's, I don't know, whether it might be your cup of coffee, whatever. Some of those things give you enough enhancement to the quality of your life that you might not want to let that go. Whereas there's some things that you do want to let go. That's a very personal thing, but just make sure you're giving much thought to that. Because if you have a drastic adjustment that you've made and you are disciplined enough to do that and stick with it, more power to you. If you can't, though, then what happens is just like when we put plans together for someone, if it is drastic compared to what they've been having at the end of each month, all of a sudden they're doing without. The second a challenge comes up, whether it's an emergency or it just gets too difficult to do, you end up getting off of that plan, just like a cheat day on a diet or something like that. So those are things to think about in terms of balance.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that obviously that can be done, to look at. Let's just jump into that for one quick second. So I have a client that I was just working with. They have a child that has a rare genetic condition, and one of the parents is a teacher, athletic director at a high school with a fairly decent salary. The other one works in the administratively for the school, but can't really do much more than a certain amount of work because she's home with her child on a regular basis. So in that particular case, some people would say, well, so how do they increase how do they increase that side, right? Because now you're just talking about reducing their expenses, and they may be cutting it right to the bone. And so a few things that we would generally say. First of all, especially when it comes to retirement and retirement planning, it's worth it to sit down with somebody who's got a very good broad perspective of finances, because where we put our money today, traditionally for retirement, are in 401k plans, 403bs if you're a teacher, 457. These are just different codes in the tax code. They all have the same benefit. 457 is for like police and fire, public servants. Some have a pension. If they're not working for a company, so they'll do an IRA. But keep in mind, those plans are in place to really, in a way, it's to reduce your tax exposure today, but you're going to have a tax exposure at the end, because all of those plans are tax deferred. You pay a tax at the end. A lot of the times at the end, like when you go and you're retiring, a lot of times your kids are out of the house, your house is, close to paid off. The amount of write-offs that you have is fairly limited. So when you go and you take that money out, you're going to be taxed at ordinary income without the benefit of having any tax write-offs to offset it. So you end up paying a lot more in taxes down the road, right? So a lot of people are like, well, I'm just going to max out my 401k, which is, in a way, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The only time it ever makes sense to max out your 401k plan is when your employer matches or better than matches your investment. But I will press to find very few companies, organizations actually match dollar for dollar on the retirement account. So rather than put that money away for the rainy day, put enough in to get the company match, and then look at putting that money somewhere else where you can actually have access to it while you're still alive, while you're pre-retirement, have access to it and reduce the amount of taxes. So that's where life insurance comes in. We're not going to get into too much detail on that today, but that's where a life insurance plan does come in. There's other kinds of plans and policies that you can put in that do provide a retirement benefit, but also protection for you if something happens, if you get sick or if you were to pass away, protection for your family. And in many cases, a permanent life insurance policy gives you access to cash now while you're alive, tax-free, to do the things that you want to do. There are a lot of other different kinds of sources. So looking at where you're putting your money. So if part of your paycheck is going to your long-term retirement, but your day-to-day today is a couple $100 extra a month, that's a challenge, right? That's a challenge for a lot of families, because the stress of having that small window, that small breathing room, is almost too much for a lot of people to handle. So the first thing is look at where you're putting your money for the future. I'm not telling you not to put it for the future. You definitely want to have it for the future. 401k plans, those were created, in the 80s to take the onus off the federal government and put the onus on companies to help provide a plan where the companies can contribute to an individual's retirement in the future. And before that, pensions and Social Security was supposed to take care of people in retirement. The creation of Social Security in the late 30s, early 40s really was at a time when you worked until you were 65, but your life expectancy was 67. So, you collected on Social Security for 2 years and then passed away. People living into their 90s now. There's more people taking money out for a longer period of time, and they're getting medical support and everything to live longer, but their Social Security, is shrinking, and we're shrinking across the board because there are so many people accessing it for such a long period of time. So Social Security is one of those challenges that the government has. By the way, it's considered an entitlement, which it shouldn't be, but it's considered an entitlement. In the category of government budgetary issues, if you look at entitlements, military, pensions, Social Security, there's a lot of these things where we have commitments where the government has made promises to people to pay them in the future that, by the way, the government has no money to pay. The government has acknowledged the shortfall in the entitlement payments in the future. They don't have a source for it. You know where the government gets its revenue from? Your taxes.
Taxes.
So the idea that so the people who pay the greatest percentage of taxes are those people who have a W-2. So you're going to pay tax. So if you're putting money away in a 401k only to take it out later, guess what's going to happen to the taxes in the future? They're going up, which means that the amount that you're going to take out of that retirement is going to go down. So you want to be looking at not just future planning for your retirement, but also, what's the tax implication, what's the tax ramifications down the road versus today, right? So that's the first thing I want to say. I know you wrote some notes, so because I want to add to that in a second. But
you saw me writing there. This is
I did.
One thing, several things I'm acknowledging here. We're not going to have enough time to cover everything today, but there's several pieces I'm thinking of. As a special needs parent and the co-creator of our initiative, and to help improve the lives from a financial standpoint of 1,000 families, building the bridge between special needs families and financial service, education, and opportunity. We've talked so much about, it's almost become like a mantra of, that I started and we always say, which is, look, it's important for everyone to plan for a time when we exist only in memory. It's twice as important for those of us that are parents or caregivers to those with special needs. But what we've almost kind of I don't know if we've overlooked it, but we haven't talked about the fact that, not only is it about that time, that time is coming regardless, but you're still hoping and hopefully planning to live a long life. And one of the trainings that we've gone through with a mentor of ours is something called Living Your Life on Purpose. And it begins with writing your eulogy and then dialing backwards from that, back engineering from that point to today. And to do that, you have to start to think, let's see, how long would I like to live? There's certain things that we can't control, right? And we have to let go of them, but we have to grab onto all the things that we can control. And how often do we hear about people that are on a deathbed, and on the deathbed, a loved one is coming to visit them and they hold on. The loved one shows up to see them, to say goodbye, and then they pass away. That doesn't mean that we get to choose when we depart, but our attitude and energy has a lot to do with that. So in other words, we should be planning to live longer. So just like we're planning for the time when we exist only in memory, we should be planning for the long life, because as you said, people are living longer. And what that made me think of is when we talked about the life insurance option, and I didn't even know this. A lot of the life insurance products that we have access to have long-term care riders. And I do know that one of the reasons why somebody would consider that, well, I have personally, is that the cost of that long-term care, access to funds in case you're unable to perform certain acts of daily living, clothing yourself, bathing yourself, feeding yourself, things of that sort, by injury or illness, it costs less than it does to get it on a standalone long-term care policy. That I knew, but I didn't even realize until this past week how highly competitive those riders are, even more so than I realized with a standalone policy. So that's one thing. The other thing I thought of as you were talking about is you have to make sure, for our fellow special needs families, those that are receiving benefits, Social Security, things of that sort, when you put these plans in place, even the most basic ones, and life insurance applies there too. We need to make sure that whoever's putting the plan together, and this isn't a plug for us. We happen to be, pretty good at doing that, but make sure it's somebody you know and trust that can
Right.
put the plan together without affecting the benefits. Because the way the benefits are set up, it's almost like, and this could be controversial if I say this.
I don't think we care really. So be
Okay, all right.
controversial. I mean, seriously.
Especially if it's effective. Okay. And this is either going to seem like meandering, or else I'm going to seem like somebody that's right on target. But coming out of slavery, one of the challenges that faced those that came out of slavery was, having an abundance mindset, because you're supposed to give these people that have come out of great limitation and, quite frankly, evil, right? Supposed to give them these things that give them prosperity, right? But you've become dependent, and when you all of a sudden have that which is provided for you to a certain extent, you come out, you're like, for some people, that's a difficult thing to do. Now, while it's not slavery in the traditional sense, when you're receiving benefits because of a disability, again, going back to the relationship with money and the mindset, you're really being put between a rock and a rock, because on one hand, you're like, okay, I have these benefits that I'm receiving because of my loved one's disability. You're literally taught and conditioned that if you make too much money, if you dare to prosper, those benefits are going to be taken away. Now, if you get to a path where you're making enough, you're like, take it away. I don't want to be dependent on the government anyway. I'm good. But between the dependency and the independence, those dollars are, quite frankly, still needed. So there's a challenge there that takes place. So hopefully that doesn't offend anybody, and there's a correlation there that can be
I don't
seen.
think I don't think there's anything offensive in anything that you said. I think that we see this a lot, and it's always the look during the pandemic. There were a lot of things that that were forced upon people. Stay at home, shut down their businesses, change their businesses. Have your kids learn at home, like especially for our children who had special needs issues. Doing a year and a half of education over Zoom for many people is a freaking nightmare. So in that particular case, the fact that if the government gives reparations, if you will, for that particular case, for any
Right.
case, really, like some people are like, oh, I'm not taking that. I don't want to profit on the pandemic. Like BS, man. The government mandated you do certain things. So if they're giving you some benefit because of the acknowledgement of that limitation, you absolutely should take advantage of it. We talk about this in businesses all the time. If you're a business owner and you had to change your business during the pandemic in 2020 and 2021, anything. We had a guest on our show. Shoot, I'm going to call him out now. Brett Lieberman from YIC Unity, Yes I Can, which is a school that takes our young adults with special needs and trains them on how to do things, how to take advantage of their strengths, and train them on how to do things in the entertainment industry, music, film, TV, and video and all that stuff, which is amazing. Well, they had to go from in-person instruction to telecommunication, to tele-instruction. That absolutely changed their situation. The government is giving back now these things called employee retention credits that every company that had an impact, that had to change their business, something as simple as, hey, we just went telehealth. Well, that was a change in your business because of mandates. You couldn't be live instructions. And now they're giving back some of the taxes that you paid to retain those employees during that period of time. That is there's a specific wealth maximization strategy. If you're a special needs family and you're an owner of a business and you do not know anything about the ERC or the employee retention tax credit, you should reach out to us. We can give you, specific, company that we work with that helps families, helps business owners recover that. But to your point, Shawn, if there's a situation that you're dealing with and the government's giving you some sort of benefit, take it. Now, don't take it at the expense of doing something for yourself. In my opinion, special needs families, we're dealing with a lot of challenges. Sometimes we're exhausted managing our kiddos at home and the life and family matters, and the idea of starting your own business is like, I can't even have time. The reality is there's a lot of stuff that you can do, because now we're talking about your P&L again. We're talking about increasing your cash flow. There's a lot of stuff that you can do on referral-based businesses. There's a lot of referral kinds of businesses that you can do. Again, in some cases you have to be licensed to receive a referral fee. In other cases, you don't. So looking at a referral-based business is one. Looking at affiliate business, where you're promoting a product online and it's fulfilled by Amazon, and that's a business that can be done. There are a lot of things that can be done in the window of time that you have to do what you can to do things online. Shoot, there are social media influencers who basically just film themselves, especially, some of the folks who have special needs kids, they talked about the challenges and what they come up against. There are companies that want to address this particular community, and social media influencers generate a lot of income just by documenting their lives. You'd be amazed at the kind of money that's being generated online as companies are looking into the Web3 space and how they can actually provide an ecosystem. You were going to say something.
Yeah, just two things. One, I know I always say it, but I really think this is the fastest hour that's ever gone by, especially when it's just you and I and not a guest.
I know, for sure.
So I wanted to touch on two things. The first thing I wanted to touch on was, if you can let everybody know, when the government looks at inflation, right, and I believe it's inflation, they take into consideration things like road, repair for roads and all of that kind of stuff. But what they do not include is gasoline and food. And am I leaving anything out? I think it's just those two.
Those are the main things that they leave out, which we're all seeing going to the grocery store for Thanksgiving. That's massive increases, 20-25% increases in pricing, right. as
and
well.
So inflation has historically been 3-4%, that kind of thing. As a result of the pandemic, it's up 9%, and they're still not including gasoline for your cars and food, right? And so what that means is, if your money is someplace where it's not getting a rate of return that is ahead of inflation, you essentially have a hole in the pocket. The other thing I wanted to do, because we're wrapping up, is if we can go down bullet points and you just touch on each of the things as we get ready to wind up, of the maximization steps, some of it being recap, and then any that we've missed.
Yeah, I would just say, listen, again, the first thing to do is to look at your home budget as like a business. Again, there's three key statements that make up your financial statements, your financial health: your balance sheet, which is your assets minus your liabilities; your profit and loss statement, your P&L as they call it, P&L, profit and loss, which is your cash flow coming in minus your expenses going out. And then the third is just a general cash flow statement month to month, right? And so if you've cut your expenses to the point where you're like, okay, we're really running everything pretty tight, we've been really smart about where we spend our money, then you need to look at, how can I increase my cash flow, my income? And so one of it is look at your again, withholdings could be one thing. Look at how much you're putting towards your retirement. Can that money be put somewhere else where you still have access to it? Because there's a lot of things that it's access to capital is a really big thing, access to cash. A lot of people, what they do to access cash, right? They get credit cards, and if their credit's not great, they're paying 18, 20, 24, 28% interest, which is all just profit center for the banks. So the banks are kind of hoping that you don't have enough cash flow, that you use the credit cards, because you're going to owe the banks. So we want to reduce the debt that we owe. We don't want to service debt on bad. There's good debt, by the way, but there's bad debt. Credit card debt for things like your living expenses, that's bad debt, right? So ways to increase your cash flow includes look at another revenue stream. The thing about wealthy people is wealthy people have own businesses, first of all, and they have multiple streams of revenue. You want to have multiple streams of revenue. If you watch any advisor in the tax space or the money space, they're going to tell you got to have a minimum 5, some say a minimum of 8 different revenue streams. Now, while that may seem hard to do, right, there's a lot of stuff that people do. In some cases, their revenue streaming is something they exchange in barter. Like, I'll watch your kids if you'll work on my car. So let's exchange you. You're the mechanic. I'm home with kids anyways. I'll watch your children. You fix my car. Barter. That's okay. That's a way of increasing your or having a positive impact on your P&L. Money you don't have to pay out of pocket. So those are the kind of things you want to look at. And starting a business is really a very important thing to think about. And while that may be difficult to think because you're thinking about it like, I have a shortage of time, I promise you, you can put a business concept in mind. By the way, some people write books. Our close friend, Susanna Peace Lavelle, is writing a book because she's a consultant for special needs families. She's writing a book because the value that she can add as a mom of a child with, on the autism spectrum, but also as a consultant and as a coach, she has a lot of value to add. That investment of time to write a book is one of those things that's something that can provide you residual income, right?
And there's a thought, right? No, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just give you an example. For Shawn and I, we've been doing this for 2.5 years. We've partnered with Billy Footwear, which is, a company that provides adaptive footwear for a massive market. And, we've got an affiliate relationship with Billy. So if you click on our link to look at Billy Footwear, you're going to get 10% off on the sales that you purchases that you make on his website. And by the way, because we're talking about Billy Footwear and Billy Price and the amazing stuff that they do, we get a 5% income stream and 5% cut of all of those sales. Shawn's going to put the link on our chat. But that's an example. We are just talking about it in a day of, part of what we do here on our podcast. And there's an opportunity for us to make money passively. So the great thing about a business, in case, sometimes it takes a lot of work up front, but then it becomes a passive revenue stream. And that's something to look forward to. Passive and residual revenues can add to your P&L. Now, in some cases, if you're writing a book in that example, you're also creating an asset because that asset's going to have some value. So these are the kinds of things that you can add to your personal activity. And while that may seem overwhelming, maybe there's some work to do in the beginning because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel like a little out of your comfort zone initially. But when you start to see the difference, the impact that's going to make on your cash flow, your personal cash flow, it's going to change your perspective, right? That was kind of the main thing we want to know. We're running out of time because we talk a lot. Did I answer your question there?
Yeah, no, you did.
Can I say one thing? Can I just say one thing?
No, go ahead. No, go right ahead. Go ahead.
So sorry. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Brian always has one more thing. Wait, just one more thing. It's like 85 things. But one more thing. When it comes to the use of debt, now personal debt is tough. You have to manage your personal debt. But if you start a business and you have a business and you can look at actually getting credit lines for your business, you can use that debt. That's a really good use of debt for you to then acquire an asset or develop an asset in the case of writing a book that then is going to pay you. First of all, it's going to add to your balance sheet, right? Because it's an asset that's worth something, but it's going to generate cash flow for you. So if you can take debt and acquire an asset or build an asset that generates revenue, that's what debt is to be used for. Successful business owners use a lot of credit. They use credit in a way to acquire assets. What are you doing? You're using other people's money. You're using the bank's money. Because if you think about this, if you pay 24% on your credit card, right, you're paying the bank a ton of money. If you put your money in a savings account, what do you think the bank does with it? They lend it to people who can pay it back. So they're taking your money and they lend it out, right? So the business that the banks are in is flow of cash. The more depositors they have, the more money that they can lend out. That they're in the money transfer business. That's where they make the money. But if you save your money in the bank, they're only going to pay you 0.03%, but they're going to charge 6 to 7% on a mortgage, 24% on a credit card, 8% on a car, maybe 4% to a business, like whatever it is. They're making money on your money. By the way, there's a thing called fractional lending, and then I'll stop talking after this. Every dollar that you deposit the bank gives them the ability to lend $10 out. They can lend $10 out for every dollar that you deposit. So not only are they paying you a fraction of what you should be getting, but they're making 10 times that money on lending that money out. So if they're lending the money out, start a business, get a credit line, that you can then take, borrow the money, buy an asset that generates passive and residual income, services the debt, and brings more cash to your P&L. That's just a simple way to build some wealth. There's more to the wealth maximization strategies. We'll add more to it. We'll do a part 2 in one of those weeks if we don't have a guest, so we can continue this conversation. But
yeah, we're going to do
some examples there.
We're going to do a live, most likely on Instagram to cover some of this, because again, there's just not enough time. But to wrap things up, the very first thing is the mindset. The quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. So in closing, we always talk about questions being more powerful than statements, being more childlike and less childish. Children always ask questions. Questions are more powerful than statements because they actually lead to the answer. So the first question you ask is, you can ask, oh my gosh, why me? Or you can ask, how do I? What if I? Wouldn't it be great when? Wouldn't it be great if? That alone can lead you to, how can I start thinking about, what could I do to increase my income stream? What might I do? There'll be answers there that will surprise you. Like when Brian gave the example of, babysitting someone's child who, works on cars and whatever have you, just a bartering type of mentality, whatever the case might be. So the first thing is just your mindset and your thinking. The next thing is then your home budget, looking at your home as a business, and then your balance sheet. What do you have coming in? What do you have going out? Your profit and loss, right? And then general monthly cash flow. And that's where you start thinking of, how do I get outside of this? Be solution oriented more so than anything else. And again, the link is on the screen for Billy Footwear. Again, Billy is a gentleman that 2 weeks into his freshman year in college fell out of a window and broke his neck, was paralyzed from the chest down, found a way to become independent and do virtually everything for himself with the exception of putting shoes on. That need, from that came a prototype for shoes where he's able to then put his shoes on by himself because it comes with a zipper as opposed to just functional laces. It went from that to a company that is now known as Billy Footwear. This past year, between his first appearance on our show and his second, which was 2 weeks ago, they have sold their 1 millionth shoe. If you click on that link that is on your screen, you will get a 10% discount on any of the shoes that they have on sale in the purpose. And they're not just functional, they're cool looking as well. And
by the way, 1 millionth pair. 1 millionth pair, just to be clear. It's not just a shoe. It's 1 millionth pair of shoes.
Yeah, I said, did I say 1 millionth shoe?
1 millionth shoe, yeah.
1 millionth
they don't
pair.
sell single shoes. They sell pairs, yeah.
Yes, 1 millionth pair. And here's the thing. He's an example, again, of somebody that is, more than likely face a mountain that is a good chance most of you are not looking at, but asked these questions and came about with an answer. And quite frankly, what he's done is not only inspired me, but, made me realize that, again, my biggest like we always say, our biggest nightmares are somebody else's dreams. And so with that said,
he was faced with the question of, he started out with the question of why me? His answer was, why not me? And I think that's powerful too. Why not you? Why not you? Yes, 1 million pairs, 2 million shoes, Mark. Yes, thank you for commenting on that. With that,
be sure to go back and take a preview. Be sure to go back and take a look at the episode with him.
The episode's amazing. He's an amazing guy. Yeah. So,
go ahead,
Brian. All right. So as we wrap up the show, empathy and love, as always, especially now during this time of thanks and Thanksgiving. Be thankful for what you have. Know that your situation is unique to you, and that means that everybody has that situation. So rather than be judgmental, have a little empathy for the folks you don't know what they're going through or what they've been through or what they're dealing with. I had a friend yesterday who told me that he had a sinus infection, a sinus problem for the last 2 years, finally got it checked out. He's in his early 50s and he has a growth, and now it has to be looked at for potential cancer from what he thought was a sinus infection. You never know what somebody's going through, guys. You never know what they're dealing with. You never know what they're having to handle at the moment. So be empathetic and look at the world through lenses of love. It always will make the world a better place. With that, Shawn, we'll throw it over to you. Hopefully we've had some value to people today.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone that took the time to tune in, whether you're doing it after the fact or you did so live. And I'm really thankful for the platform and the opportunity and our conversation today, because we're reshaping the initiative that we have to build a bridge between the special needs community and financial service, education, and opportunity. And a big part of that is the wealth maximization strategies. Any event that you've attended before, where we've shared some information and concepts. This is going to be a little different. And we're really looking forward to it. So stay tuned for that information. I want to thank the women in my life without whom I would not be. That is my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. I want to thank my kids, family, and friends. Thank you, Brian. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. There's always something to be thankful for. Remember, everybody needs to be seen, needs to be heard, needs to know that they matter and that they're loved. And wherever you may be, thank you so much, and we love you.
Thank you, Sean Hall. We love you, man. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks, Sean.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.